watching Day or Night X. X is for exotics. Hit the like button if you like what you see in this video, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I got a question via email about my ball python feeding schedule type thing. And I've said this before in other vids, and I'll just keep this nice and short. I don't really try to stick to any strict regimen of a schedule when it comes to my ball pythons. What I try to do is I monitor them individually, meaning as a case-by-case basis. I don't really go into it thinking any one day is a feeding day. So along with that comes with power feeding. And I know like a lot of people, you know, administer power feeding in their regimen, in their collection. I have never done that, mainly because I've said this 1,000 times, but my animals are pets first, breeders second. There's no reason for me to overfeed them or power feed them or give them extra meals when it's really not needed for weight purposes as far as breeding goes. So I would say for my collection and for my animals, I try to really monitor them and get to know their behaviors and know when they're really hungry and when they're not. And trust me, when I first started out, when I had, let's just say 5 or 6 to 10 ball pythons, of course I would order food and I have plenty of food and I would just feed them and feed them and feed them. But what I realized really quick, especially with my normals, which I don't know, I mean, I don't know if it's a normal thing, you know, because when you start going to designer morphs, they seem to eat a lot better than normals. My normals are the most finicky, inconsistent, like desert wasteland of eating. They will eat a meal and then not eat for 3 or 4 months. An animal, especially like a ball python, when they're really young, if you give them something too big, they will just sit on that meal and they can sit on it for a very long time. I went through that, and I actually have a video of me basically giving my ball python, my very first ball python, Coraline. I gave her way too big of a meal, and it was literally like maybe a couple weeks, maybe a few months into me owning her. I can't really remember, but I'll put the link in the description of that video, and it's you can see her eating it. And this meal is way too big for her. If you watch that video, after that, she didn't eat anything that I gave her for like 7 months. It was a long time, to the point where I was like getting really frustrated and confused about what the hell was going on. And looking back on it, it's just because I gave her way too big of a meal, and she just kind of sat on that meal and she was content. Weight, it didn't hinder her. It didn't hinder her weight. It did not hinder her her energy level, her sheds or anything like that. All it did was set back her feedings. That's the only thing that changed with that. And I did that with my spider. He when I had like a few ball pythons, he did the same thing. Same with my pinstripe. So after kind of getting a feel of what ball pythons, you know, like to do when it comes to their feeding, I kind of got into a little bit of a groove of just doing case-by-case basis and then figuring out which each one needs as far as feeding. If I have a sub-adult ball python and it refuses to take, and if I have it in my records and I know it takes every couple months, it will take down a nice sized rat, no need for me to panic. That's just that animal schedule. That's when it wants to eat. My babies, that's a different story. If they go off feeding, then I need to step in and kind of do something, because that weight will drop to a substantial amount where you'll know, you're getting that danger zone of being like, okay, I need to do something here because they're way too small, you know, for their, especially with their weight. Now, if they're going for almost a year and they're like, you know, the grams are just really low, just severely just underweight, you know, then you need to step in and you need to assist feed. And I've said it before, I've had to assist feed a lot of my ball pythons, especially if they're babies. I've done it more times than I would like to. But I do have some adult females who don't eat all that often, maybe eat every 3 months. And they'll eat, when they do eat, they eat a good sized portion. They eat a good size, you know, medium rat, large rat. None of my animals are on jumbo rats or anything like that, as far as ball pythons go. All of them, outside of maybe a couple, they eat regularly, you know, but I've switched most of them over to rats. I prefer rats. If I can get them on the rats, and that's including my carpet, all of them. If I can get them on rats, that's fine. Sometimes you only have mice, and if you have to double up on them, in a week to get them up to size. That's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal, but you have to just take it case by case basis. And coming to mind, when I think about some of my animals, like my pinstripes, certain species, no matter what you feed them, they just kind of. I just did a video on my lemon blast, and he is just literally like one of the most slender, athletic looking, I always say athletic, quote unquote, looking ball pythons in my collection. No matter what I feed him, he's one of my best feeders. You wouldn't tell by the way he looks. He's so slender. He eats more than almost any python in my collection. My pinstripe is the same way. My quote unquote normal pinstripe, just a straight up pinstripe. He's the same way. So it's like I feel like the pinstripes got to do something different there. All my spiders they fatten up really well. So I kind of go off of weight. You have to weigh them. You have to keep an eye on them. You check on them. You make sure they're not dropping too much weight. But some of them, they don't want to be bulky. If you think about human beings, there's some people that eat at McDonald's every day, and there's some people that eat literally like vegetables and seeds and apples every day. Vegetarians versus, it's the same thing. That doesn't mean the vegetarian who eats a little less. Like, I'm a person who doesn't eat a whole shitload of food every day. I'm not a big eater at all, but you couldn't tell by looking at me that I didn't really eat all that much. I think I look okay. I don't look like malnourished or whatever, but I don't eat nearly as much as my friends do. People I know, I eat like a quarter, almost 3/4 less than they do a day. But so I kind of look at that in ball pythons, but everybody's different. This is my collection. Like, I have some greedy ones in there where I have to be like, okay, you're skipping a meal for a week or whatever because they're just getting too big. I don't like my ball pythons just obese. Obesity in animals to me is a little strange because out in the wild, unless there's some place where they're just completely dominant over every other species out there around them, it's kind of hard to get to a point where you're obese unless you take down a really big meal and you're just sitting on that meal. We've seen that in shows all the time. So I don't want them obese. I like them athletic, quote unquote. I always say quote unquote because people like athletic with a fucking snake. I like them athletically. I like them having energy. They're not lethargic. They're responding well to their feedings, and they're staying on schedule for each individual schedule. Each individual ball python in my collection has their own schedule of eating, and I kind of just, and that's after me having to figure that out, trial and error, keeping track of things, and knowing my animals. I know when one's needs a meal and one can back off for a month maybe. So that's the way I approach it. I hope that helps you with your question. Everybody's collection is different. Everybody's animals are different. Your methods of feeding may be different. But for me, there's two things that I look for in my ball pythons. I try not to get them obese. I want to keep them on a regular schedule where they're feeding consistently and not going off food because I gave them too much food. And they go off for a month and it throws off the consistency. I want consistency. And I also want them healthy. I want them moving around. I don't want them fat and lazy sitting in the corner somewhere. And that's just me. This is all just advice. That's just my personal preference. I don't want them bone skinny where they're so skinny where they feel like rubber in your hands. But at the same time, I want them in that, that Goldilocks zone. I don't want them too obese and I don't want them too skinny. I want them right in the middle where, I'm not stunting their lifespans by just power feeding the crap out of them, and I'm not trying to get them up to size. If there's a ball python that I am trying to get up to size, I will increase their feedings a little bit, but not with mass. I increase them with the consistency of the feeding, which means if I got a medium rat going, I'm not going to switch from a medium to a large just out of nowhere. I'll just continue feeding medium rats maybe twice a week, or I'll double it. If I feel like if I want to get somebody close to that, but I haven't really needed to do that. I'm not really trying to go that route with my ball python, so there's really no need for me to push any of them along to a degree where I feel like I'm out of my comfort zone with feeding them, because at the end of the day, I have to feel comfortable feeding them, and I want them to feel comfortable with what they're taking in, and trust me with that. I don't want them to be, because they do respond differently to food. If you put something too big in there, they'll let you know It's way too big. I'm gonna try to take this down, and they'll end up regurgitating it. Excuse me, or choking on it. It's not worth the hassle. I feed them exactly what they need to be fed, and that's it. And I go from there. So I hope this answers your question. If you haven't subscribed already, like I said at the beginning of this video, subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hit the notification button so you don't miss an episode. And be you, be genuine.